In this module we're going to look at dialog flows. So far I've created a single procedure called logon, and what I want to do is create a new procedure which I'll call menu, and open up the procedure step and create a window for it, and then open up the window. And what I want to be able to do from this window is allow the user to go to the logon dialog. So to do that I'm going to create a menu item, so a top level menu called, let's say, action, and then within that a menu item which I'll call logon. And then when the user clicks on that logon menu item, I'm going to run an event action which I'll call flow to logon, and in my action diagram code there is the event action flow to logon. So when the user clicks on that, we want to flow to the logon, and the way we achieve that is through something called a dialog flow. And a dialog flow is a way of transferring or linking from one procedure step to another, in this case from the menu to the logon dialog. And the dialog flow specifies two exit states for a link flow. One is the exit state that triggers the flow from menu to logon, and then the return on exit state. You can specify a different type of dialog flow called a transfer, where it closes the first one and opens the second one, but in this case after the logon I want to go back to the menu, so I'll leave it as a link. So I need to specify the exit state that causes the flow to be triggered, and I'll create one called link to logon and select that, and then an exit state that causes the return back from logon to the menu. So I'll create an exit state there called return from link. So those are my exit states that trigger the flow, and then I need to make sure that my exit states are set. So in the menu, when they click on that menu item, I'm going to use the exit state is statement to set that exit state. And in my logon, when I've successfully logged on, I want to flow back, so I set the exit state to return from link. So we can generate that and test it. Right now our load module only contains the logon, so I need to add the menu into my load module. So I'll open that up, select my menu. I need to give it a transaction code which I'll call menu. And then if I don't want someone to be able to directly access the logon anymore, they have to come from the menu, what I'll do is clear the transaction code for the logon, so you have to access the application from the menu. So now I'm going to generate my code. And test it. So here's my menu and my menu action logon, and that brings up my logon dialog. So that's a simple dialog flow. Having entered a user ID, maybe we need to know what the user ID is back in the menu. So what I can specify on my dialog flow is what data is sent from the menu to the logon and what data is returned. In this case, I want to return the logon work back to the menu. So I'm going to specify that that data is returned. So now you can see here the logon work is provided as an import view. In other words, on the dialog flow, the export view of the logon is matched into the import view of the menu on the dialog flow return. I don't have to return all of the values. I may not want the password. I'm going to keep the password localized within the logon. And if I want to retain that logon work inside my menu, then I also need an export view for it. When you return from the dialog flow, the logic inside the main body of the procedure step is executed, and you will recall that export views are always initialized. So if I want to retain that, I must move my import to my export. A move essentially is like a bunch of set statements. So if I had my password attribute in the view, that move would move both of those attribute values to the corresponding attributes in the export view, and that would be functionally equivalent to setting the export view to the import view. But using set statements, I have to specify each attribute individually, whereas with a move statement, as long as there are some corresponding attributes in the two views, the move statement is a way of simplifying moving the data from one view to another without having to write individual set statements for all of the attributes. However, in this case, I don't want to have the password, just the user ID. One other thing that you have to do is the mapping. When the window has completed its work and is returning back to the procedure step, the export view again will have been initialized, so I need to map that to the import view so that the data coming into the export view comes from the import view. So essentially, to retain data within the procedure step, you need to do the mapping here, and you also need to make sure your imports are moved to your exports in the procedure step logic as well. So I may want to just again output a message here so we can show that the data's come back in. So create a message box just so we can take a look at the data. So regenerate the code. And test it again. And there is our message from the menu. So, welcome John. The first message was the message output in the logon, and then the second message was the message output in the menu after the return flow. So that's the concept of a dialog flow. We set up a flow from a procedure step to another procedure step, and the dialog flow specifies the conditions on which the flow is triggered and returned, data that is sent and returned, and then you can also specify what happens at the destination procedure step. So for example, I want to just display the logon, not execute its logic, and on return I wanted to execute the logic, which is the logic here. So that's the the properties of the dialog flow. There is another way of displaying this data. Whilst you can add dialog flows within the procedure step editor, there is also a dialog flow diagram, and this shows the procedure steps and the flows between them. What I'm going to do is just pick this menu up and drag it there so it makes a bit more sense. We're flowing from the menu to the logon. So you see the two procedure steps here and the dialog flow between them, and you can double click on the dialog flow or click on the dialog flow to see its properties and access the action diagram window, so that if you're designing complex set of dialogues, the dialog flow diagram can be a useful tool to provide an overall picture of the procedure steps that you have in your application and how they flow from one to another. So that concludes this module on dialog flows.